I'll tell you something that might sound completely insane. Last spring, I buried a fish head in my garden, threw my morning hair from my brush around my tomato plants, and poured my own diluted urine on my corn. My neighbor thought I'd lost my mind. 3 months later, that same neighbor was standing in my garden with his jaw on the ground, staring at tomatoes the size of softballs and corn stalks that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. He asked me what expensive fertilizers I was using, and when I told him the truth, he literally laughed in my face. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about modern gardening. All those chemical fertilizers and fancy soil amendments you're buying are just expensive versions of what people threw away for free hundreds of years ago. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. It pushes this video to more people. Think about it for a second. Your great-great-grandmother didn't have a garden center down the street. She didn't order bottles of liquid nitrogen from Amazon or buy bags of bone meal from the hardware store. But somehow, she grew vegetables that actually tasted like something, fruit that was so good it would make you weep, and flowers that made the neighbors jealous. How? She used what she had, and what she had was considered trash by most standards. The problem is, we've been conditioned to believe that good gardening requires spending money, that healthy plants need products with barcodes and ingredients lists you can't pronounce. It's completely backward. The best fertilizers on earth are probably sitting in your kitchen trash can right now, and you're about to throw them away without a second thought. Let me take you back to something that happened in the early 1600s, something that literally saved an entire colony from starvation. When the Pilgrims arrived in Massachusetts, they tried to farm the way they'd farmed back in England. They planted their crops in neat rows, used their European techniques, and waited for harvest. The crops failed miserably. The soil was different, the climate was harsher, and these English farmers were completely out of their depth. They would have died that winter if the Wampanoag people hadn't shown them something that seemed absolutely disgusting at the time. The Native Americans told them to bury a fish in each planting hole before putting in the corn seeds. The Pilgrims thought this was barbaric, wasteful, and frankly revolting. But they were desperate, so they tried it. The next harvest was so abundant it became the foundation of the first Thanksgiving celebration. That fish, rotting slowly underground, released nitrogen and phosphorus exactly when the corn needed it most, creating an explosion of growth that synthetic fertilizers still struggle to match. This isn't just some quaint historical story. This is the foundation of understanding how plants actually eat. See, plants don't absorb solid food the way we do. They can't bite into a banana peel or chew on a fish skeleton. They need nutrients broken down into forms their roots can absorb. And the absolute best way to do that is through decomposition powered by billions of soil microorganisms. When you bury organic matter in your garden, you're not directly feeding your plants. You're feeding an underground ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, worms, and countless other creatures that then transform that organic matter into plant-available nutrients. It's like having millions of tiny chefs in your soil, cooking up exactly what your plants need, exactly when they need it. Now here's where it gets really interesting and why your trash is actually treasure. Used tea bags contain nitrogen, magnesium, potassium, and trace minerals that plants desperately need. But more importantly, as they break down, they create humic acids that supercharge root development in ways that chemical fertilizers simply cannot replicate. The paper fibers in the tea bag create tiny air pockets in the soil, and earthworms go absolutely crazy for them, dragging them deeper underground and aerating your soil in the process. Every single day, billions of tea bags get thrown in landfills when they should be feeding gardens. It's such a waste, it's almost criminal. Or take human hair, something that sounds completely bizarre until you understand the chemistry. Hair is 17% nitrogen, which is actually higher than most animal manures. It's also 50% carbon, and it breaks down slowly over 2 to 4 months, releasing nutrients in a steady, sustained way that prevents the boom and bust cycle you get with quick-release fertilizers. European and Asian gardeners figured this out in the 1700s, and they'd regularly visit barbers to collect bags of discarded hair for their gardens. Modern homesteaders are rediscovering this ancient wisdom, and the results are genuinely shocking. Hair scattered around the base of squash plants not only feeds them but also deters rabbits and deer because they hate the human scent. It's free fertilizer and pest control in one package. But let's talk about something even more controversial, something that will definitely make some people uncomfortable. Human urine, when properly diluted at about 1 part urine to 10 parts water, is one of the most powerful nitrogen fertilizers on the planet. I know it sounds absolutely disgusting, but hear me out. Fresh urine is completely sterile. It's high in nitrogen with some phosphorus and potassium mixed in, and scientific studies have shown it actually performs better than synthetic nitrogen fertilizers when used correctly. Commercial greenhouses in Scandinavia are already collecting and processing urine as part of closed-loop nutrient systems because they've done the math and realized this free resource outperforms expensive alternatives. I started using diluted urine on my corn and leafy greens 3 years ago, and I'm never going back. The growth is explosive, the leaves are deep green, and there's something deeply satisfying about turning waste into food. The thing is, all of these methods work because they align with how nature actually functions. In a forest, nothing goes to waste. Dead leaves fall and decompose. Animals die and their bodies feed the soil. Trees drop fruit that rots and feeds next year's growth. It's a perfect closed loop where waste doesn't exist because everything becomes food for something else. Modern agriculture broke this cycle by removing nutrients from the land without returning them, forcing farmers to buy synthetic fertilizers to replace what was taken. But in a home garden, you have the power to close that loop again. Every banana peel, every crushed eggshell, every coffee ground, every strand of hair can go back into the soil instead of into a landfill. Let me tell you about something called the Three Sisters system, a planting method discovered and perfected by Native American tribes, particularly the Haudenosaunee people. They planted corn, beans, and squash together in the same mound, and what looked like random companion planting was actually sophisticated agricultural science. The corn grows tall and provides a natural trellis for the beans to climb. The beans have special nodules on their roots that pull nitrogen from the air and fix it into the soil, feeding the corn and squash. The squash spreads its broad leaves across the ground, acting as living mulch that shades out weeds and keeps moisture in the soil. It's a system so elegant and efficient that it produces more food per square foot than modern monoculture farming, while actually building soil fertility instead of depleting it. Indigenous farmers grew food in the same plots for generations using this method because the soil got better every year instead of worse. This is the pattern you'll see repeated throughout history. Before industrial agriculture, before chemical companies convinced us we needed their products, farmers and gardeners were incredibly creative with waste materials. Wood ash from fireplaces was scattered around fruit trees and brassicas because it provided potassium and calcium while raising soil pH. Crushed eggshells were worked into soil around tomatoes and peppers to prevent blossom end rot, a calcium deficiency problem that still plagues gardeners today. Coffee grounds were composted or spread around acid-loving plants like blueberries and azaleas. Cardboard was laid between rows to kill weeds while feeding earthworms that turned it into rich organic matter. Every single one of these materials was free. Every single one was destined for the trash. And every single one produced results that rival or exceed expensive store-bought alternatives. But here's what really drives me crazy about modern gardening culture. We've been taught to fear organic materials, to see them as inferior or unreliable. Garden centers want you to believe that plants need precisely formulated fertilizers with exact NPK ratios printed on the label. They want you to think that organic waste is dirty, smelly, or dangerous. It's marketing, pure and simple, designed to keep you buying products you don't actually need. The truth is that plants have been thriving on decomposed organic matter for millions of years, long before humans invented synthetic fertilizers. Your plants don't care if their nitrogen comes from a bottle or from composted kitchen scraps. They literally cannot tell the difference at the molecular level. What they do care about is getting a steady, balanced diet of nutrients along with healthy soil biology, and organic materials provide both in ways that synthetic fertilizers struggle to match. Consider something as simple as crushed seashells, a material that coastal communities have used for centuries. When you ring the base of your plants with crushed shells, you create a physical barrier that slugs hate to cross because the sharp edges damage their soft bodies. At the same time, those shells slowly decompose over years, releasing calcium, magnesium, and trace minerals into the soil. It's free slug control and long-term fertilizer in one material that you can collect for free at any beach or even get from seafood restaurants that throw them away by the bucket. The crushed texture also improves drainage in heavy clay soils, solving 3 separate garden problems with one waste product. Or think about comfrey, a plant that most people consider a weed. Its deep taproot pulls nutrients up from subsoil layers that shallow-rooted vegetables can't reach. When you cut the leaves and either use them as mulch or steep them in water to make liquid fertilizer, you're essentially mining minerals from deep underground and delivering them exactly where your heavy-feeding crops need them. European gardeners have called comfrey the gardener's friend for centuries because it concentrates potassium and micronutrients into its leaves, creating homemade high-octane plant food with zero purchased inputs. You grow it once, and it keeps producing fertilizer year after year for decades. The pattern here is undeniable. The best garden inputs are the ones you don't have to buy, the ones that would otherwise be thrown away, the ones that work with natural systems instead of trying to override them. When you bury banana peels around your roses, you're not just adding potassium. You're feeding soil microbes that then feed your plants in a complex web of interactions that scientists are still trying to fully understand. When you scatter coffee grounds around your hydrangeas, you're not just slightly acidifying the soil. You're improving texture, adding nitrogen, deterring slugs, and feeding earthworms that will create channels throughout your soil. Every organic material you add creates ripple effects that benefit your garden in multiple ways simultaneously. And here's the beautiful part that nobody talks about. When you start viewing your household waste as garden treasure, you stop seeing trash the same way. That banana peel isn't garbage anymore. It's potassium for your tomatoes. Those coffee grounds aren't waste. They're nitrogen and pest control. That cardboard box isn't recycling. It's weed suppression and earthworm food. You start to see closed loops everywhere, connections between your kitchen and your garden, between what you discard and what you grow. It changes your entire relationship with consumption and waste because suddenly you're not just throwing things away. You're transforming them into food, flowers, and abundance. Your garden becomes a living example of regenerative thinking, where waste is just a resource in the wrong place, waiting to be transformed into something valuable.